Matt, I think we're up with you to start this next one, right? Yes, sir. So Matt, the topic here is compromise. So let's assume that each of you get elected. The rest of our Democratic friends are as energetic as we are in Middletown in the House debate. I guess that's like a gong show now. So let's assume that the rest of the Democrats across the country are working as hard and the House stays Republican. So be a minority member of Congress. What are the issues of which you're willing to work across the aisle with our Republican friends? And what's non-negotiable for you?
It's a great question. So I've represented one of the poorest communities in the 18th Congressional District, and I think this is one that I've seen problems even with Democrats. I feel passionate about making sure that that last wagon comes in that Mario Cuomo spoke about in 1984 when he said that we have to make sure that everybody makes it across the finish line. I don't believe in this evolutionary approach that Nan Hayworth and her Tea Party friends believe in, and I've been there working for a very challenged community that has extreme poverty issues, youth at risk, single female head of households in poverty, and a terrible drug problem that comes in as a result of lack of opportunities. And these programs that make sure that the safety net is maintained and that the gaping holes that do, I'm here to tell you, exist in that safety net as it has been for the past 20 years get sewn up and people get taken care of, because I have seen people falling through those holes and it breaks my heart. And when I saw a woman in the village of Wappingers Falls, she was shot by her husband in an episode of domestic violence in our town in front of her 2 children as a result of bad job opportunities and poverty issues that surrounded this family. I was there, and I was there to make sure that all of the issues surrounding this terrible incident get taken care of. Things that I would work across the aisle for, things that I would do, and I have done in terribly Republican Dutchess County, is work on jobs programs. Convince Republicans that, as we all know, progressive values are the right and good thing to do, but as I know, and from my experience with my father, I know that I can argue this point and win. The short-sighted conservative agenda should learn and know that progressive ideas are also cheaper and better for the bottom line and deliver more for the constituency than the short-sighted conservative agenda, and we can achieve cost savings by taking care of people at their base needs and providing abilities to get jobs.
Yeah.
That's a great question. How do we get the country going again and try to compromise? And it's something that I get asked everywhere I speak, because this 112th Congress doesn't get anything done. It's obstructionist. All they do is fight and bicker. They're too partisan, both sides. And so how do we do this? And I think I'm a very practical guy. I want to compromise when I can. I've learned in my life I get more with honey than I do with vinegar, and I always like to reach across the aisle. But it comes down to one thing. Does it pass the sniff test? Does it cross your values? I will compromise on anything to get things done as long as it doesn't compromise my values or the needs of my community. That is the litmus test for me. It has to be right. I will never do something that's wrong just to get something done. It has to be good for the community. It has to be safe and clean and effective, and it can't compromise the values. So as long as people understand the ground rules, I think Congress can be very effective and get things done. I think one of the problems was that the previous Congress, when President Obama was first elected, got so much done because there was a Democratic majority. In 2010, when the new elections came in and they had the midterms and it became a Republican majority, the wheels cranked to a stop. And that was because they're obstructionists. So you need to get both sides involved. You need to get people to understand that this is the only way to get things accomplished. And I think that this current election, whether there's a Democratic majority or a slight Republican majority, it'll be a much more balanced Congress, and I think we can get things done.
Well, it's getting harder to agree on things when things like
Violence against women used to be a bipartisan issue. Now it seems to not be a bipartisan issue. And things like, making everybody participate in the health insurance program that covers everybody used to be a bipartisan issue. It's not a bipartisan issue anymore, right? I mean, what about global warming? That used to be a bipartisan issue. It's not a bipartisan issue anymore. But look, I've spent my whole career working with people who disagree with me. When we were in the governor's office, we had to balance the budget every year. We had to do that in the room with the Republican leaders. And that required difficult compromises and real conversations. And where the rubber meets the road, you've got to give a little if you're going to get a deal. And that's fine as long as you're dealing with people on the other side who are willing to give a little bit too. And so getting along is important, as long as getting along doesn't mean getting rolled every time. And I think sometimes Democrats get rolled too much. I think we got to know when we're the only ones giving and the other side isn't giving enough. Now, I'm also very proud that when I was in the governor's office, one of the proudest things I did was work on the marriage equality legislation that we introduced in April of 2007 for the first time. Governor Spitzer did that. He should get credit for that. In April of 2007, he put a bill into the legislature to make marriage equality the law of New York. And I had a small part in writing that legislation. And we knew we could not get that bill passed without Republican votes. And that bill was passed with Republican votes in the state Senate. And that's important because real progress is always going to require cooperation. And I think we ought to say, I mean, look, you've heard these guys. Any one of these guys would be a better congressman than Ann Hayworth, right? And and I've said I will support any one of them that wins this election because we're Democrats. We got to come together when all this is over. So I will work for them. I will raise money for them. But I think that what matters is that when you become the congressperson, you represent everybody. This is not. We got too much of that in Washington. I'm not going to Washington to represent Democrats. I'm going to be, a representative for Americans who live in this district. And so we've got to work together. We got to stay together. We are either going to work together or we are going to fall apart. And I believe that, and that's what I want to do.